Okay, so we talked last time about certain things that we thought were thematically interesting, right? And we talked last time about sort of the world of the play at the beginning and sort of the world of the play at the end. So another theory is also about sort of the notion of what is dramatic action. What does that mean? Dramatic action basically means change. Something happens. So it's, again, really simple. You're, beginning, middle, end thing. Come on, Aristotle, you're not helping me here. Something happens, right? And it couldn't be simpler in these plays that you go from darkness to light. Romeo and Juliet starts out as a comedy and ends as a tragedy. Characters start out with one thing and they end up as something else. And this is then replicated within every act, it's replicated within every scene, and it's replicated within every soliloquy. This sort of notion of beginning, something happens in the middle, changes your heart, your mind, your thought, I'm somewhere else at the end. It's the same, it's replicated over and over and over and over again, this sort of three-part structure, okay? So, what's the world of the play that what's the world of Vienna that we first meet? Disastrous, chaotic, decayed, strict, maybe, but like, not, right? Things are not right in Vienna, as it were, right? Things are rotten in the state of Vienna, right? Okay? And then the question becomes, what happens at the end of the play then? How do we feel about what that is? And part of the interesting thing for me is to sort of figure that out, or at least to talk about it in terms of dramatic action structure, the structure of dramatic action in terms of change, is what is it then if it's got to be opposite of what it started out to be? Because if you say, well, it's this chaos, decay, strict, what's the opposite of that? And it's always that simple. It's just opposite. It's not really working all that hard at this. It's just simply opposite. And if that then is the case at the end, what is that world then, right? It's light, it's maybe equal, it may be not chaotic, it may be not sure. And then you have to kind of figure out as you see the actions of the fifth act whether you think that works or not. But it may be an interesting frame to put those crazy actions of the fifth act in. Because you don't quite know what to do with them, really. If you're just kind of looking at them as they unfold, like, oh my God, it's like, all these plays, starting in Two Gems, it's like, oh my God, there's another revelation. It's like, you gotta be kidding me, buddy. With the convention of revelations that happen over and over again, if you're looking at it sort of literally or psychologically only, or just in terms of those kinds of arcs, it doesn't necessarily make sense. But if you look at it that we're all part of the same, we're all part of a thing, we're all part of this relay race, and that actually, while we're watching it, we're in the middle of it, we're supposed to be that confused. The point of fact is that there's actually a reason for how he's demonstrating, how he's using the characters and the actions and the consequences of all those things, and how he actually changes a world. He's literally, right? He's playwriting. He's changing a world from this to this. So it's just something to think about in this play. It's technically in the comedy section of the folio. And as we said last week, a comedy is anything that's not a tragedy. So that's like 95% of all literature, and in some ways going from darkness to light, whatever that, it could be really, really dark to really, really light, or it could be just kind of, dusk, to dawn, gradations there. I'm not saying it always has to be dramatic, but generally speaking, the bolder choice that you can make in terms of the change from one thing to another will help contain all the actions that happen in a Shakespeare play, right? Because it's just multiple. These are not 2 and 3 character plays. They're not just one line or maybe 2 lines with like a little subtext or sub-story. All these stories actually have incredible weight to them, right? They all contribute to one thing. That's how it works. Okay. So, just kind of looking at how that all gets kind of put together. And so we were talking about honor a little bit last time, I think. We were talking about justice and mercy and justice. And my handwriting says seeming. Right? Seeming. Right? And there was something else that was a big word. Authority. Yeah. Authority is said more times in this Shakespeare play than any other. So sometimes it's fun to just kind of chart where they show up. And I didn't do this today, so we don't have to go through this tedious exercise. But sometimes it's really interesting to just kind of know where they come. I think we talked about this last time, just to kind of count the fact that there are how many times that authority shows up is one thing, but who has the word, when they have the word, right? Usually if it's distributed among all the characters, that at some point somebody, and I think in this play it's probably true, that almost everybody gets to say the word justice. Then that almost kind of bubbles up as sort of one of those themes that you really kind of want to pay attention to and honor, like where it happens, who says it, how many times. It's not so much how many times, it's kind of like when and who. And the more it's distributed, I mean, you know, versus the character that you always know what they're going to say. You kind of go, oh yeah, they're always going to have that point of view kind of thing, right? In that one-dimensional kind of way. Or, you know, you get the friend that's like, yes, I know exactly what we're going to, yes, I know exactly what the response is, I know exactly what, right? That's different. These are not the way these characters are being built, are they? They really are dimensional, which means that they all get to have this chance. They all get to have this chance to change. They all get this chance to do something surprising. That's why they're rich and deep, isn't it? Because and again, if you're looking at it sort of psychologically, or the way that we would sort of like make assumptions about the way people should behave, you often get confused in these plays. But if you look at it as a function of a larger whole, then you begin to see how they all fit in together. Right? Okay. So, what I also found was interesting is you've got this sort of strict world, right? What we were talking about, this sort of strict world, and maybe it's this equal world or something. I mean, this is the only way I can explain the Duke asking Isabel to be a partnership. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting sort of thing. It was like, I'm going to open this up a little bit. I'm going to be, you know, a benevolent dictator. I don't know. I'm going to be, you know, I was creepy before, now I'm benevolent. I mean, it can be done too, I suppose, right? I don't know. See, you get to make these interesting choices if you look at it from dark to light, right? How are you going to fit in that? Well, what kind of interesting choice is that going to be for you sort of individually? And then you got a bunch of text to sort of, then you have to use the text to support that, just like a good statistician, right? You know, you use statistics to make your own point, right? Now, here's another interesting thing that happens. It's in, of course we have to have purple for the Duke, right? So Dookie is in the third scene saying, all right, Friar, buddy, right? I'm about to change. I'm going to change in the Friar. I'm going to check out the action of the thing, right? Okay. Now, let me just freak you out here. This is 200 lines in. Lucio takes the lid off. What do you think? 200 lines from the end.
Well, don't cut those lines.
That's exactly, don't cut those lines, right? So when we mess with introductions sometimes, and we mess with sort of epilogue things, you just now mess with the integrity of the play, right? Beautiful, isn't it? Right? If you look at it that way. Lady Macbeth enters 600 lines in, she exits 600 lines from the end. Perfectly, she is in the third of the play. It's perfectly structured, right? So you got to look at that. That isn't the case for all of them. You know, it's not, you know, give or take. But I mean, it was sort of like gasping this morning when I did this. I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me. Really? Really? I can't help but think the guy is not kidding, right? Disguise into revealing. Right? I mean, it's kind of extraordinary. And we all know, because of course, again, plays are being based on life experience, and dramatic meaning something happens, and usually when we're in the theater we think really dramatic things happen, versus sort of the undramatic things that happen in the course of our day, which are still maybe small things, but it happens in a moment. One's life changes in a moment, right? You're breathing, and then you're not. It's a moment. And so when people talk about sort of these sudden shifts that happen in Shakespeare, like, really? Like, really? You don't think this is the way life is? Really? Right? I really love my job, but if I win the lottery, Powerball, it's got to be a certain amount. If I win the Powerball, it's probably not coming tomorrow. Do you know what I'm saying? A moment on the TV. Oh my God, that little ping pong. It's a moment, right? All life just changed. And that's what you're looking for. All life changes. The minute this moment happens with the bed trip, all life changes here, right? This is all set up to it. And these are over and over and over, little beats in every little scene. This sort of replication of the irrevocability of certain things, right? And there's consequences for it. And sometimes people actually think before they do things. I don't know how human that is, but sometimes in this play people do, right? And then it's always about these consequences of it. But that is what happens constantly, isn't it? It's this change from I'm breathing and I'm not. That's what all these are based on. Again, imitation of the life cycle. So here it really is. I'm the Duke, I'm the Friar, and then I'm not. One little moment, change the whole, right? Just completes the whole action of the play, doesn't it? So that's how these things are structured. So thinking again sort of from the poem, from the poet, that's how that works.